As you can see, I've got a couple of things on the screen right now that are, maybe you've seen them before, or hopefully you've seen them before. But these are two, I guess, different images or two different tools that we're going to be using a lot throughout this playlist to help us understand a little bit more about reading music. And this down here, this is a diagram of a keyboard. So if you've ever seen a piano or if you have a piano, this is what part of your piano looks like. And as you can sort of see, it repeats. So that part from here to here kind of looks like, from here to there. You can kind of see that there's some type of repeating pattern here, and we'll definitely talk much more about that in the future. But at any rate, this is a keyboard, and it's the same keyboard that if you have a piano or an organ or electronic keyboard or any number of different instruments, this is what it generally looks like. This is what you would play would look like. So anyway, that's the first thing. And the second thing that I have up here, this is a 5-line staff. So 5-line staff. And the 5-line staff is typically what 90% of musicians will read. Typically, people that aren't playing what are called pitched instruments. So if you're maybe a percussionist and it's not, drum set players would actually read on a 5-line staff most of the time. But typically, most instrumentalists, and especially all instrumentalists, or most, I shouldn't say all, but most instrumentalists that play some type of pitched instrument, and that's if you're playing in, actually, I shouldn't even go into this detail, but if you're playing in, I guess, maybe a Western tuning system, that's a type of instrument that'll divide an octave up into 12 different notes. And if you didn't understand what I just said, completely ignore it. We'll talk more about that in the future. But if you play a pitched instrument, that is, you can almost think of that as an instrument that you could play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on, and you could exactly hear it, then you're going to be reading a 5-line staff. And so anyway, to start talking about that, and to start talking about what a 5-line staff and a keyboard help us think about, what we're going to, how we're going to divide music up. And there's, many ways to talk about music and many ways to describe a piece of music. You could say that there are infinite ways of describing a piece of music that you're listening to. But how we're going to really talk about it for, I'd say, most of this playlist, until we get most of the basics really under our belt, we're really going to divide music up into two categories. And that is, and I shouldn't say music, but how we read music and how we think about music, we're going to divide into two categories. And the first way we're going to think, the first thing that we're going to be thinking about with music is rhythm. I always forget how to spell this. Rhythm, I think. Rhythm. And so pretty much what you can think of rhythm is when we play something. So I'm going to say when you play. So if I play, I guess you can think about how long I play each note. If there's silence in between one note and another, that's pretty much all going to fall under the category of rhythm. And this is really what we're going to spend most of our, or I shouldn't say most of our time, but we're going to spend most of our time at the beginning of this playlist talking a lot about rhythm. Because rhythm is really specific, it's specific to, or it's specific to no instrument. Everyone needs to have really good rhythm. So anyway, that is the first area of what we're, first way we're going to describe music. And then the second way we're going to describe music is pitch. And pretty much what you can think of as pitch is, if we were going to take a look at this keyboard down here, if I was to play this note right there, if I were to play that note, it would make some sound. And if I chose another note, let's say if I chose another note to the right of it, and I could choose any note. If I chose a black key or a white key, any note that was to the right of that note, I would get a higher pitched note. Higher pitched note. And similarly, you can probably imagine that if I chose, any note to the left of it, any note down there, I could choose a note on a black key that was to the left of that note in orange that I just played, I would get a lower pitch. Lower pitch. And so you can kind of think about that pitch is not so much when to play. Rhythm was when we play each individual note. And typically this can be a bit more difficult to understand when you're first learning it. Pitch is going to be what note we play. So I'll just write that down. Or which note to play. You can think about if you were playing keyboard, it would be which one of these keys. If I had a piece of music in front of you that was telling you, play, play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, you could imagine that pitch would be telling you, if you were reading the pitch off of the piece of music, the pitch would be telling you which of these keys, which of these keys I wanted you to hit. The rhythm is going to tell you when I want you to hit each of those keys, or in what order I want you to hit each of these keys. But the pitch is going to tell you which exact keys I want you to press. So anyway, that's a little bit of an introduction to pitch and rhythm using the keyboard. Now let's actually jump up to this 5-line staff. So on the 5-line staff, we're going to actually have a bunch of different things. And actually, let me create a few new layers here. You would have, and I'll just draw a few things on here, and we'll talk much more about this in the future, but you're going to have some type of clef. That's a treble clef, and don't worry about that. We'll talk much more about what that means in the future. You'll have a key signature, and again, don't worry about it. We'll talk more about that in the future. You'll have what's called a time signature. Looks like that, and we'll talk much more about this actually very soon in the future. So you have these on a 5-line staff, and then what you've got, another thing that you have, let me actually, there we go. What you have on a 5-line staff is you have notes. So that could be a note there. Actually, that stem should go the other way. That could be another note. We could have some notes like this. We're eventually going to come to call those eighth notes, but we'll talk about that much more in the future. We have these notes on the staff, and if we were to take these notes that I just drew and move them up or down on the staff, all that's going to change is this pitch that we have. So if I take these notes and I move them up on the staff, so say that they started here, and I just decided, I was composing this music, and I said, you know what, I don't like the way these notes sound down here, I'm going to move them up there. Then what that would mean is, similarly on this keyboard, it would be like saying if I started at this note, I moved higher up. I moved to higher pitch notes that were to the right on this keyboard. The notes got higher. So you could imagine, I'll embarrass myself with some singing. If I started right here, then if I started right here and went up higher, it would be maybe up here. If I can embarrass myself with singing. But if I were to move these notes to start here and then move them up, I moved them higher on the staff, the notes got higher as well. Similarly, if the notes started there and I moved them back down, they got lower. And all I've changed by moving the notes around like that is the pitch. I haven't changed anything about the rhythm of how I play the notes. So if I can, hopefully you don't mind, I know I'm a bit of a math guy. Hopefully you don't mind me kind of drawing some analogies to math, but if I were to move notes up and down on, I guess, this up and down axis, if I can use a math term, all that's going to change is the pitch. If I move the notes up and down, let me do that again, like this, if I move them up and down like that, all that changes is the pitch. I play them higher on the keyboard, I play them lower on the keyboard like that. However, and it's not as direct as saying if I move them this way, but typically sheet music is read just like the English language. You start at the left and you move to the right. if I move them, and it's not as direct to say if I move those notes like that, if I move those notes from right to left, it would directly affect the time. It's more if I change the order of those notes, it would definitely affect the time. But typically, I guess right now when we're starting out, you can typically think as we move forward along this axis, as we move starting from the left, moving towards the right, you can kind of think about that as our time axis. Or that's how we're going to interpret rhythm starting out, or that's how we're going to read rhythm. So anyway, I'm pretty much out of time for this video. Hopefully that at least gave you a little bit of an intuitive sense of pitch and rhythm. In the next video, we're going to get much more into the specifics of what all these crazy symbols that I drew on this 5-line staff actually mean. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.